Hello, Tales from the Ditch listeners. I have an exciting thing to share with you. We are going to release the 9th episode, the Lost episode with Ryan Smith, where we discuss things that caused this episode to be removed. Now, some of the more controversial things that were removed are lost forever, but we have been able to restore much of the discussion without the potential federal crime. So we hope that you would enjoy this while Seth and I take a 2-week break to deal with life. Thanks.
Do you guys remember what Obi-Wan says to him? He goes...
There's always a bigger fish.
He's like... Zanzibar.
Welcome to the Tales from the Ditch podcast, where everything we do is fraud. But the statute of limitations has dried up. What if you were waiting for a statue made out of concrete to dry? Is that entrapment?
I would break you out if you went in. I'm just saying.
I'm accusing you two of entrapment on the last podcast. You entrapped me.
Here's the thing you have to remember. And I totally get where you're coming from. I really just don't care. I don't care about your emotions. And we've been friends 25 years, and I've said this, and I don't know why you're expecting differently. Ryan, you okay?
I'm here.
Ryan, just know, though, any guest we put on the show affirms and agrees with everything we say and
That's
supports
not true.
It. We've been endorsed.
Explicitly not true.
Endorsed by MacArthur.
We
have John MacArthur.
Can I talk about the rough time we had last time, just real quick? Elephant in the room.
Me? Because I put on weight?
Seth got really overheated for some reason.
Oh my gosh, you're so bored.
Had to take his shirt on and walk out. He was sweating. His ears were sweating inside of the headphones.
I just got nervous.
And he was freaking out.
I tend to have that effect on people.
You make chubby people sweat?
Yeah.
I may have talked about...
I don't do that much. They actually tend to just kind of sweat most of the time.
They're like, their eyes get big and their dog-like tongue comes out of their mouth.
How much do you think Spurgeon weighed?
Thank you. Huh?
How much do you think Spurgeon weighed?
I'm sure Google can help us with that.
Spurgeon, 280.
I really Spurgeon that
that's
one.
Big. 280's big for Spurgeon.
Is he not tall? I thought he was a big guy.
No.
I'd say 280.
You know who's surprisingly tall is Tim Keller.
Really?
Maverick walked up to my belly, hit it a day or two ago. He goes, "Oh, your belly's getting bigger, Dad." I was like, "Thanks." He goes, "It's getting there." And he's smacking it, staring at me. I was like, "Well, your shirt looks dumb."
Who bought that for you? Where do you shop?
No, I love the kid.
He's adorable. Also, Ryan slipped on some gravel in my backyard.
Destroyed my knee.
Already agreed, not suing.
Okay, here we go. I got how much Charles Spurgeon weighed.
All right, Seth, you want to take a bet?
230.
Did you have a bet?
15 love.
Spurgeon weighed 9 pounds and 11 ounces at birth and was 21.25 inches. Just kidding. That was for someone named... Oh, that was one of the Duggar kids. They named their kid Spurgeon. Oops.
Awkward.
This is a disaster.
Hey, do you guys know how Spurgeon died?
How did these die?
Did he choke on something?
No. Any guesses? No guesses? Survey says he died of gout.
Oh, really?
What?
Yeah.
I thought this was a joke.
Nope.
A reform joke.
No,
I was waiting for a
you were waiting
punchline.
for... He died for John Piper. John Piper killed John Spurgeon. What?
Gout.
So you don't know how much he weighed?
I
I
feel
think
like
280.
I feel like
he
in
was
his
like
time,
6'2".
people didn't really care about weight. They're just like, I weigh.
Actually, I heard a story about John Spurgeon one time.
John, his dad,
Charles Spurgeon,
brother?
and John
Chuck Spurgeon.
John somebody who was a pastor, I think.
John Knox. Yeah, he was.
And that guy, not John Knox, he came to Charles Spurgeon's house. Charles Haddon
You know
Spurgeon.
this
I
story.
do know names. And he said, he knocked on the door and Charles Spurgeon answered the door, and he was smoking a cigar.
You know this story.
I know this story.
And
That's a
the
good one.
John pastor was like a big fat guy.
I think
and he says,
Wesley.
"Oh," he says, "Charles Spurgeon, how can you be smoking? You're a child of God." And Spurgeon said, "And you, sir, are too fat." And he closed the door on him, and that's when he became my favorite theologian.
And that's how he saved spring break and invented the iPhone. Oh, history's beautiful. It's just a tapestry.
One thing that happens, I think, sometimes people pervert things that
it was
are
GF
in the right
Pentecost.
attention. John F?
GF Pentecost was sharing the pulpit at the Metropolitan Tabernacle. Spurgeon preached against the danger of sin. Pentecost was invited to make the application. During the time, Pentecost preached vehemently against smoking tobacco and cigars in particular. After he concluded, Spurgeon stood before the congregation and said, "Well, dear friends, you know that some men can do to the glory of God what to other men would be a sin. And notwithstanding what Brother Pentecost has said, I intend to smoke a good cigar to the glory of God before I go to bed tonight."
Yeah, what a baller.
Salty.
I think,
Wesley would be way too old.
little known fact, Day of Pentecost was named after that guy. Did you guys know that?
Sponsored by Alex Jones Protein Drinks. Made from the real bones of lizard people. Isn't that nice? So organic.
Because you said John. That's
You know what happened? Yeah, I don't know where I got John. I thought his name was John, but maybe I misheard.
It's because you... All right. Well, I'm uneducated, so I just agreed with you. I was like, oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. You know what I'm very educated in, actually?
Bruce Campbell.
And Willis. And adhering to the norms of the Star Wars universe.
Oh, gosh.
And I know that somebody's an up-and-coming director. Oh, gosh, don't even do that. I'm a Star Trek fan as well, too, but like, whether you're a good director or not, and you have a point to make or not, like,
Scoff.
was your whole mission to crap all over something that has already been established? Like, is that the only reason? Are you like, I can't wait for this chance to take everything that people have been working hard on and just reverse it?
It's not like he committed voter fraud, though, Sean. You're making this so dramatic. Like,
hypothetically,
You know what?
hypothetically committed
some
voter
people,
fraud.
if they committed voter fraud, it might be the good.
I mean,
for
those
the good of
people
all the
are
people of the democracy.
terrible. Those are the people I just... yeah.
So you're still anti Last Jedi.
I didn't hate The Last Jedi, but I really didn't enjoy it very much.
Yeah.
I still can't get the chapped alien nipples out of my head when he was milking it to get the blue milk. I thought it was green milk in the movie.
Green, but yeah. Regardless, it's a callback to the blue milk on Tatooine.
Yeah, I got that. I just felt
But
like
blue milk
there was better ways to do
Star
that.
Wars geek thing.
And I think, like, people say, oh my gosh, look, he really turned it around, and you know, the way that he created roles in the universe where the women were, you know, making the intelligent decisions and the men were just bumbling idiots throughout the whole movie. Like, wow, the way that he was able to craft that and make that so interesting. And I was like, no, it wasn't interesting. The whole entire casino part was super boring. The pretty horsies part was super boring and unnecessary. Captain Holdo?
Admiral Holdo. Yeah. Laura Dern's character.
I thought she would have been fine. She was in Jurassic Park, right? I thought that character was fine and it would have been good. Laura Dern. But the way it ended up and everything, it just... I don't think it brought the story forward. And I don't think any character really grew in that at all.
Oh, man. I disagree.
I know you do.
So much.
I want to hear why.
Yeah, so, I mean, bringing characters forward, I think, like, there's so much stuff that we move forward with, I feel like. So you had, you know, Poe Dameron's character who, you know, his whole answer to everything is hop on an X-Wing and blow it up. And, like, I think through watching what happens with Admiral Holdo, like, he turns where he begins to see that that's not always, sometimes running and moving to a different, you know, a base on a salt planet is actually the wiser call. I think, like, Poe, he starts off and he's, like, running away from the fight. You know, he wants to get in the escape pod and take off. And by the end, he's, like, through Rose and kind of this like kind of love thing that they develop between the two of them, like he's actually like, oh no, like it's actually like worth fighting for regardless of the risk that comes with it. And he almost over course corrects and does like that suicide mission. And then he's able to like grow again. And it's like, well, no, it's not. It doesn't just come through like, these suicide missions of what can happen. But
don't you think though, those things were spelled out in such an obvious childish way? Like Poe goes at the end of the movie, goes, you know what, guys?
Yeah.
I guess running away is the right answer. And even like at the end, Rose is like, it's not about what you fight. It's about
we win
what
not
you
by destroying
save.
what we hate, but by saving what we
something
love.
like that.
Yeah, it's
and
an
then
incredible
has
quote.
like the worst pass out thing. Like, did it have to be spelled out? Like I'm 4 years old.
I think so, but that's. I feel like Star Wars has always done that. Like that's not a new thing. Like even like I was thinking about this, the joke with Poe at the beginning where he's like talking over the monitor and he's kind of like, oh, I'm going to talk to Hux. I'm still on hold or whatever, and it goes like a beat or two longer than what you would want.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, for me, like the first joke was like, ha ha ha, and then it keeps going, and I'm like, okay, the first time I saw it, I was like, there's a lot of jokes like that, and there's a lot of things like that in the movie that feel like they're a little more spelled out and a little more crystal clear than they need to be. And I was like, but at the end of the day, like, those jokes have to do that. The change has to happen because of the fact that it's a kid's movie at the end of the day, And so like for them to, I just think about comparing that with Rogue One. Rogue One's comedy was much more like dry and quick and simple. And this one like made it a little more clear. This is all part of, I have a big theory that I think the anthology, those standalone movies like Rogue One and Solo that's coming out next year, I think those are going to be a little more darker, a little more like driven towards us, like as the adult fan base that grew up with Star Wars.
I could see that.
And I think the main stories, the trilogies, as they finish up the Skywalker one in a couple of years, and then from there, the one that Rian Johnson's now going to be directing, that those are going to be more like large, like for everybody, the wider audience, and then also for children. Like that's like the Fathiers, like the horse doggies, and the Canto Bite scene. Like I at first didn't like the casino scene, but I was like, that is wholeheartedly something that like kids absolutely would love. And like I think what Rian Johnson's trying to do is try to go and look at what did the kids actually really appreciate about the prequels, and like bring some of that over and leave like some of the bathwater out and try to find the baby because the prequels totally have some baby. Like they're not altogether awful. I'm one of the few guys that stands by that I do not, I like the prequels are the lowest on my list of the Star Wars movies.
I agree with you there.
But
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think there's still something that they contribute to the story. There's still moments of it that are good. I think Rian Johnson with The Last Jedi did a really good job of, kind of learning from the prequels and advancing the story. I really think, like, I thought there was a lot of character development. We now know Kylo Ren. We know who he is. We're not guessing. Maybe he's going to turn back. We know who Rey is. We know her parent, like, lineage. And we know that now she's been tempted by the dark side and she's overcome it. Like, so she's kind of solidified herself now as good. Like, there's a lot of those things that, like, I feel like, that there was character development that moving into the next movie, I'm not wondering where anybody is going into this, like I was with moving in from Force Awakens to Last Jedi.
See, I'm still wondering the same thing about Kylo.
Like, so you still think there's a tale of redemption for him?
I think there could be.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. And I didn't see him grow through anything. I saw him doing the same thing, I felt like. One thing I noticed...
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
He was totally like a teacher's pet with Snoke in the first one. So he was like totally like whatever to authority, like to the point of like there was never any like rebel pushback against Snoke.
He was a bad pupil.
How do you know he wasn't
disappointed
planning
with him?
Because Vader acted like loyal, then
that was a snap second thing. That's why they show the go back and forth between Luke being electrocuted by the Emperor and like Vader thinking about it, and like in that moment goes back to the light.
Some of the expanded universe. See, that's the thing that's hard for me. They threw that out. The expanded universe.
They didn't throw it out. They have pulled things from it. Luke's whole like force like telepathy or whatever, his force projection. That's a good way to put it. Like that was totally something that they used in Dark Empire.
Because expanded universe, Vader, they made it seem like he was playing it the whole time. And Kylo Ren, I go, how do I know he wasn't just going, yeah, I'll be loyal till I need. And I look at it, I go, I go, well, they always show Sith betraying each other, and Kylo Ren betrays him. I go, they've always done that. There's nothing new
I could
about
totally
that.
agree with that, but I think there's a difference in him sitting in like being obedient and doing what he needs to. In that moment of taking the lightsaber and killing Snoke, that's a moment.
He killed Snoke.
Spoiler alert.
We'll have to edit that.
But you
out
see what I'm
along
saying?
with
Like, I
other
think that moment, like, totally, he may have been planning that from the Force Awakens, but that moment that he's now made the decision that I'm going to rule the First Order, that is a character progression of he's made a decision, like killing Han, that he's moving further into a specific trajectory that he's wanting to follow.
See, and I felt like I thought it was a genius move. As the only problem I have with it is the writing. The direction I thought was good. The visual direction was good. The CG was good. The pace I think was good, except for Canto Bight. The writing was frustrating. The one thing that I thought was great was when he's about to kill Leia, or he's about to shoot at the ship that Leia's on, knowing, you can tell he knows that it would be the end of her. Yeah. And he doesn't. And then it happens anyways. I thought that was genius. Mm-hmm. If the rest of the movie could have been dealing with Kylo's inner turmoil and getting to the point where he makes a solid decision and does grow, I thought it would be cool. But the rest of the movie, you just see him flip-flopping back and forth. I kill Snoke. I still want to join with Rey. You don't know what I'm going to do. You never know because I'm mysterious. And that's why I wear black all the time. And I just, I guess I wanted something else. I think I'm just an old man and I just want my old fashioned Star Wars, darn it. And I think that's part of the problem. You know what I mean? Because there was a couple of things that I wanted to see that I didn't, and I was frustrated by that.
Yeah.
And I think that I remember when the movie ended and we were all in the theater together and Seth just left because he was so upset.
Seth just like, we all waited outside like, did he go to the bathroom? Do we need to call someone?
Classic
an Irish
Seth. It's an
goodbye.
Irish goodbye. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know
Seth's
anyone
been doing that since we were 9 years old.
Yeah, I did before it was cool.
But I remember when the movie was over, I was like, man, there are 3 solid things that I wanted to see that never even happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was disappointed by that. But I like to consider myself open enough to be able to see what a director is doing. But I just really felt, and maybe I'm wrong. I've watched it 4 times. Maybe I need another 4 to change my opinion. But I felt like it wasn't like him being really creative. The writer, I should say, being really creative, who was Rian Johnson. I felt like it was him just being really lazy and trying to get an agenda across and being lazy with the writing. And so it was like he got all his points in and then he just kind of wrote around those points. And I thought I was frustrated by that. I could be wrong. Maybe he slaved over in it and it was a masterpiece and I don't get it, but it just didn't hit me that way. And I wish it did.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I mean, you guys know, like, I saw it opening night with my wife, Erin, and then I saw it the second time that night when we went and saw it. So that when you guys saw it for the first time, I was seeing it for the second time.
Right.
And, like, when we walked out of the theater, Erin was like, you're quiet. Like, I was, like, just, like, not saying anything. And she's like, is everything okay? What's going on? And she's like, what'd you think? And I was like, I hated it.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so my first viewing, I was like, I hated it. And most of it was for that reason. Like, this doesn't feel like the Star Wars that I know and love. Like, and what I found out is I kind of sat on it that night and I called my brothers and was talking to them about it. And it was less of like, I think me saying the Star Wars I know and love was like a way of saying, this isn't what I wanted.
Right. That's true.
This isn't what I expected.
I'll cop to that.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think I had set my expectations for what this story would be. Because The Force Awakens in many ways was just really introducing us to the new characters. It really didn't move in a new narrative. Though The Last Jedi is really the one that really has started to show us what this trilogy is going to be about. Right. And so I think I was just like, I had a hard time with that, you know, seeing Luke in the way that he was and getting more about Kylo and Rey and getting to know them and kind of even how the Force works. There's new ways of understanding the Force and what the Force is able to do and all that kind of stuff. Like all of that was not within my realm of expectation. And so I think coming into it the second night, I was kind of like, my expectations have been smashed. And now I'm coming into it expectationless to kind of experience this again.
Right.
And I think that's where I kind of came around to like really appreciating it. I think most of the areas that I have issue with are the exact things that I think as Emma and your guys' boys get older are going to be their favorite parts of The Last Jedi.
Sure.
Like the jokes being a beat too long, the failures, like all those, the casino planet and like, the opera singer lady as they're running through there, these things that are kind of like, as an adult, you roll your eye at, like those would be the things that our kids would be on the floor laughing at when they watch this. And I have to constantly kind of like, what killed the prequels were bad, but so much of, I think, what we over-hate on the prequels is honestly, George was really trying to make a movie for kids.
Yeah.
And I think...
Or the special edition of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Was made more for kids.
Yeah. And I think that's been the big thing that George has always been trying to do is like Star Wars is for kids. Star Wars is for children. It's a fantasy taking place in space. And I think sometimes we look at Star Wars through the lens not of like a space opera, but as like a sci-fi. We expect it to act like Star Trek, and it acts more like The Hobbit.
Right. That's an interesting thing. What happened to George Lucas between 1975 and 1990?
Diabetes.
I have a theory. I think George, I might get shot for this. I think George is great. There's nothing against George as a person. I think a lot of what he captured with Star Wars and with a lot of that work, I think a lot of it was lightning in a bottle. I don't think him as a director, he naturally, that's not him naturally. I think the A New Hope was lightning in a bottle. I think a lot of what made Empire good, was Lawrence Kasdan writing with him.
Oh, absolutely.
And then Return of the Jedi, we went back to some of the New Hope stuff, and that's why Return of the Jedi was one of the low point ones.
Right.
Is because of the fact that Lawrence Kasdan wasn't on that one. That one was largely George Lucas, and I don't think he was able to capture the lightning in a bottle that he was able to with A New Hope. And so I think George is great, but I think a lot of what George captured was just this lightning in a bottle of culture and a story that all kind of coalesced into this magic thing that I don't think he was able to capture again with the prequels.
Well, and he let go of stuff. He would let other people direct those films, and he would just kind of be a supervising director or something like that. And he wanted to be all over the prequels, and the prequels were not good. And I'm sure George Lucas is a great person, but I'm just going to say the prequels weren't good, and the writing was the biggest problem of it.
Yep.
I didn't have a problem with...
I hate sand.
Yeah, sand. It's coarse. Was that even in the theatrical version?
Yeah, well, it's in Revenge of or Attack of the Clones.
I feel like something happened, kind of a similar thing that happened to Michael Jackson, where all of a sudden you hit some age and being acceptable and cheerful and loving and being a stand-up kind of idol to children becomes important to you, and then all of a sudden your life just takes a downward turn. And that happened to both Michael Jackson and George
interesting.
Lucas.
I mean, not with the Jackson thing, but with George Lucas, I wonder if that arc of over kind of leaning into kids came with his with like him having
when
kids.
he had a kid. Did
you know
he
what
not
I mean?
have a kid before?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think his kids were probably born like between New Hope and stuff, probably.
Man, having kids does change you.
And I think that might be what happened.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but that would be an interesting theory to follow up on.
I like to consider myself at one point a filmmaker, and I've made terrible films that I hope my children never see. But I will not go back and edit them with CG to make them more palatable. I'll just destroy all evidence of them ever.
Yeah.
Seth was in a lot of those. Speaking of statute of limitations, remember when you shot your gun in a wilderness area into a neighborhood blindly?
No.
Okay.
You mean with the Desert Eagle 40 cal and I had dark hair and it was over in that area by a ditch?
Yeah.
Nope.
That was a tale from the ditch.
I never did that.
Yeah, it never happened, but I'm just saying.
Hypothetically,
if it did happen,
if I did, it was awesome when you got on camera.
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think you guys are wrong on everything, but that's fine.
You probably
that's fine. I love when guys cause this is everyone's favorite, a director takes a comic book hero and everyone gets super excited and they're like, yes, they're going to make a movie about my favorite hero. And he goes, except I'm going to go away from what you want and the core of it and do something different. And it's got to piss you off. And even though you are the ones who made it famous and popular and everything, like, no, I'm going to do this because like the guy who said, oh, I'm going to make Superman. Remember this story from Kevin Smith? But he's not going to fly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take away these core things because I have a different vision. And comic fans always appreciate that. They're always like, thank you for taking the thing I love and make it something else. And then when you express that opinion, everyone goes, oh, these stupid fanboys, and they get mad at you in the comic section. And I go, well, I love this material and it means something to me.
Yeah.
And it's a stupid double-edged sword of whether it's Star Wars or comics, they want you to care enough that you'll buy all their stuff, buy the movie ticket, buy comics, buy toys, but not care enough that you get frustrated with them when they deviate from that or do have a different vision. They go, well, we want you to care enough that you'll pay and be there opening night, but we don't want you to care enough that if we deviate from that you have an emotional response to it. And this isn't speaking of Ryan, this is speaking about like legitimately. Last Jedi, I went, okay, that was like a fun film. I enjoyed it. But there was stuff I went, no, I that's great. I see your vision. I don't like your vision. And they go, oh, well, he's doing this. I go, great. I don't like that. So people I can hear everything Ryan's saying. And I go, yeah, and I don't like any of that.
Yeah.
And yet when that happens, they go, oh gosh, why you take it so seriously? It's just a movie. I'm all, oh, you want me to take it seriously enough to make 1.5 billion, but not seriously enough that I have an emotional response to it. Sorry. Like that's one of the few movies my dad watched me.
Yeah.
So Last Jedi, I can look at and say, gosh, like, when Kylo and Rey are fighting is it the Red Guard, Ryan? Is that what you call them?
Or just Snoke's Imperial Guard.
You have this view of light next to dark. You have the colors. I can look at that and go, great. And
that
then
Red
look
Samurai, yeah.
And look at other parts and go, no, I just don't. It's the same thing when they did, Superman Returns with Brandon Routh. They're like, oh, well, here was what we were trying to do. I'm all, oh, I totally get that. I think it sucked. So Last Jedi, I've heard argument after argument, but I just don't. I go, and I've seen it multiple times now, and I go, okay. I'm like, I don't want that. Yeah. So that's fine. And I'll still see. It could be Star Wars, like a story about Chewbacca's weed farm. I'd still go pay to see it. But I don't have to always, and everyone does caricatures, and then people throw out memes, and they go, well, this is, and I'm guilty of this too, I get it. But I saw it, and I think it's lazy when people go, well, if you just understood. I go, no, I understand that. I just don't want it. Yeah. I'm fine with Captain America movie, them sticking to the fact that he was a Christian in the comics 30 years from now, still doing that, going, well, that's who he was. I go, fine. And if some guy wants to go a different direction, well, he's totally free to. But I can look and go, okay, I don't want that. I didn't want another direction. I literally, and I'll admit, watched Star Wars and Lord of the Rings because there's this sense of, dude, I just have such a connection to that. Yeah. And it's not that Ryan values it any less. I mean, obviously he cares about the thing. He just walked to do it, saw it a second time and went, okay, here's where he's going. Yeah. I saw it and went, oh, that's where he's going. I'm like, I just don't prefer that. And I'm still going to follow it. Yeah. But I just don't prefer it. And I've said this to people, and I've had guys get mad. They go, this is what I heard over and over. They said, this is the best Star Wars film that's come out. And I went, I just disagree. And they get mad. Yeah. I go, I'm still going to go see it. I still love it. I just don't. I just don't. I look at, I've tried, and here's the thing, I watched it when I was drinking. That's why I'm like the calmest. Mm-hmm. And I still was like, no. I was like, okay. And I do have the issue. This is one of the big issues I don't like. I don't agree with building someone up by tearing others down. Yeah. And I do feel like all the women were portrayed phenomenally. They made me dislike all the male characters. Where legitimately I was like, it made me dislike characters, and I felt like it was a huge tonal shift where, what's the guy's name he's like the second in command of the first,
Hux?
Yeah. It went from the switch of the first one. I was like, gosh, this guy reminds me of a Nazi too. He was almost comic relief. Mm. And then all these other male characters, I legitimately didn't like any of them at the end. I liked Rey. All the female characters, I was like by the end going, man, these are noble, amazing characters. I was like, wait, all the men I disliked by the end and saw as like either apathetic, arrogant, foolish cowards. And I'm like, wait. And I do feel like he was trying to make a contrast to make other characters seem good. And that does bother me. I don't like the idea of lifting others up by pushing others down. Because I also feel like, here's the thing. It's not that there's no place for that, because you can contrast characters. I felt like it was lazy. There's a way to do it without. If they had one character like that, by the end was like, these stupid men. And I go, wait, why am I feeling like this? Like, the only guy at the end I was kind of pumped on was Luke a little bit, where I went, okay, he at least did this. Everyone else, even Finn, when he's about to save them from the giant cannon, he gets knocked out of the way, and there's still the threat of the cannon. And in history, the ultimate, like, ideal a lot of time in masculine stories was the noble hero who dies and sacrifices himself. And I get why they wrote it that way of like, okay, she does that and like stops it. But I was like, well, but you actually stopped him from doing something that in masculinity, a lot of like historical things, that was seen as noble and this beautiful redemption thing. And he doesn't even get that. So he's the guy who screwed up. He tried to abandon ship in the beginning. And then the one time when he could redeem himself, he gets stopped by a girl who likes him. And I go, I was hoping he would. I was like, okay, but he does this. No, that gets taken away. So I did not like the characterization, but I could list like 10 things I loved about it, but I could list 8 or 9 that I didn't. And I just went, okay, that was good. It was an okay film. But people got mad because they told me this is the best film ever, and I didn't agree. Well,
I think the problem with that is what you see in like, I mean, it says something about our culture today and how like, split everything is. Like, you are either, it's to kind of use like the Revenge of the Sith, like you're either for me or against me. Like we very much think in terms of like black and white. So you're either a Star Wars fan, which means you think each movie that comes out in succession is the greatest Star Wars movie ever, or you're not a fan at all. Right. And you hate Star Wars and you're the worst human being. Like that's so much of how a lot of people are coming to terms with the Star Wars stuff right now.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Yeah, totally. And so I think the problem is like what Seth speaks to is a guy that loves Star Wars, knows Star Wars, and yet can look at something that comes out and goes, I appreciated it. From my perspective, I wish it would have gone somewhere else. That doesn't mean I'm not a Star Wars fan anymore. I'm not following this anymore. But I think the problem is that a lot of time the comments section tends to make it look like, well, then Seth doesn't like Star Wars anymore.
Right.
But I just think that becomes the consistent thing that I've seen a lot within fandom in general. It's either
heck yeah,
you love everything that comes out, or you don't love it at all. And
have you seen the Game of Thrones fandom, guys?
I don't follow that.
Okay, how about this? Rick and Morty.
Oh yeah,
those guys get up.
Holy crap! Yeah. I remember someone sent me a link to an episode. I was like, oh man, I was like, that was okay.
Kind of funny.
And he goes, only okay. I go, well, I've heard of nihilism before. Like, this isn't impressive.
This isn't anything new.
And that was not what
you're not getting it, Seth.
Yeah, you're not smart enough.
Yeah, and I was like, but I can physically beat you. So I don't see. See, all right, here's the thing. We don't add violence enough in these conversations. Violence is a great equalizer, and this is what frustrates me in this day and age. When I was a non-Christian, that's how I could always deal with stuff was I didn't need wit. I had my fists. So even if they're like, I have a better point, I'm all, but I can physically assault you. So therefore, I win. And it was a great equalizer. Now I can't. Now I have to actually be intelligent and have a good debate and have points and reason and evidence. And it sucks because people will say something. I go, dang it, I was hoping we'd just fight. I don't have anything to back up my argument. They want reason and intelligence and violence is a great equalizer.
I mean, we can move on to the Star Wars thing. I think I'll just, like, my kind of closing thought, #blessed.
You can do a closing thought.
My closing thought on Star Wars is I think there are a few cultural, like, icons that I think that people carry as much emotion and like tradition and like a sense of heart into as they like come to terms with it. Like I think next to like the Passion of the Christ, I think there are a few movies that people have as much expectation going into as they do with Star Wars.
That's true.
I mean, so Seth just said like, that was one of the movies that he used to watch with his dad growing up. That was one of my earliest memories, was watching A New Hope sitting on my dad's lap. That's like one of my earliest memories.
Yeah.
And so I think there are a few things that... Is something on fire? What's going on over there?
I put a
just
pipe out in the trash
fine.
can. It's a long story. Just continue. I'm listening.
On fire. And I was just going to say, I think there are a few cultural things that carry as much emotion and expectation for people as Star Wars does. And so, of course, everyone's going to have different perspectives when they're deciding to take it in a new direction.
Yeah.
Is this from steak? What is...
I think that's a steak container. Put steak on it.
I don't know what to do with you two.
What we gotta do the 15-minute filler to cover over Sean's indiscretions?
I have a tale from the ditch that has to do with Star Wars.
Let's do it because this will help in case that text comes back negative about what I asked.
Okay, so I remember one time, that was how I think. The Phantom Menace had just come out. How old were we? Do you remember?
I'll tell you how I know my age, and it's bad because I want to say it. Okay, I want to say Phantom Menace. I was...
Can a tech guy Google it?
18?
Something like that. No, it wasn't. We weren't that old, I don't think. We were driving either way. And we were still in high school, so maybe 18, I don't know. And I couldn't drive. You drove before me because I had to wait a year to get my license.
I failed my test the first time.
Yeah, I remember that.
I kind of lost it.
Yeah, we saw The Phantom Menace.
The best of the Star Wars movies.
The greatest. And I remember this feeling of like, we didn't want to not like it. Like, we were at first trying to defend it.
So much.
We were like, no, we probably just did not, we didn't trace.
Ryan signaling something. That's
3.
dope. Wait,
Edit.
what do you...
W.
Oh, W.
I-L.
I got you.
You do this. You just do...
Yeah.
Not...
That's not a W, though.
This? That's West Side. Yes, that's a W.
This looks more like a W than that does.
That looks like you're flipping us off wrong. That's what that looks like.
Okay.
West Side.
W for Wilshire.
I secede.
This is going to be the most edited episode. So, we saw The Phantom Menace. We were depressed that we knew it was bad, but we were almost unwilling to admit it until...
I didn't want to. I felt bad about saying
Yeah, because I was like, how can this be bad? It's got to be good.
How old were you guys when it came out?
We're trying to figure that out. What year did
I
it
was
come out?
9, so it would have been 1999.
99. So we were 16,
Wait, how old are you
17.
now?
I'm 27, 28, 27.
So we were 16. Because
2 plus
I
2
remember
is 4. Quick maths.
there's only one thing that depressed me more in Phantom Menace. Corey and Topanga breaking up.
Yeah. It was
Or
around
when
the same
she-
time.
Oh, wait. When she moved and he sat out with Sean on the porch. Because I was like, well, I guess I'll go to Clayton Middle School tomorrow. That'll
Yeah.
cheer me up.
Okay. Yeah.
All right,
No, we
continue.
were driving, though.
Yeah.
should have an episode
No.
about-
Boy Meets World was before. I'm just saying
Yeah, Boy Meets
comparison of
World,
sadness.
okay.
So 16.
So
We were
there was a
16.
We should
lot
have
of-
a whole episode where I come back and we just talk about Boy Meets World.
Keep it rolling, people.
My point is there was a
16.
lot of sadness going on.
What does
we were
our sound
depressed
guy
about
say?
That. Okay. Okay.
No.
16.
We were.
Greg,
No.
Greg,
Yeah, that's what I thought. 16.
cool.
I
Thanks,
was
Greg.
16, or I was 17. Seth was 16. Something
You're
like that.
only like 2 months older
Hold
than
on.
I
me.
don't know.
Greg's waving something.
Hold on.
I am taller.
No, we don't want pizza.
We have a call from Troy Hubert. Just hang up.
All right, hello, Troy.
Don't put it on
This is Troy,
speak.
guys. I'm Troy.
No, the phone, Greg. Hang up the
This
phone.
is Troy. Troy Hubert at your service.
Oh, Troy. Okay.
Greg, I swear, if you mess this up for me,
Troy. Okay.
Troy
Greg
Mother
confirmed. Greg confirmed. We were about 16. I was taller and more muscular. And so, at the time, we were just pretty depressed about this. And I remember it was like the night, if not the very night that we saw The Phantom Menace, or maybe it was a couple nights after. Maybe you remember this, Seth. I had to go to work. I worked at a truck stop, and you didn't have to work. But that night, there was a weird solar storm or something was happening, and the Aurora Borealis was visible as
by the
far down as...
elementary.
Yeah. So, yeah, remember? So it was Arizona was like as low as the Aurora Borealis got. So most of the United States could see it if it was clear enough. And it happened to be a clear night here. I knew about it because I saw it on the news or something like that. Or my dad's all into that stuff, and maybe he told me about it. So I knew that it was going to be visible that night. You didn't know, though. And so...
I didn't know a lot of things already.
So what happened was, I came home, and I saw your car parked at my house, but you weren't there. And so I was like, where's Seth? And you know what? I knew geographically where you would be because we grew up together at the ditch and everything, and I walked down to the elementary school, and I saw your silhouette against the red aurora borealis sky. I saw you sitting on the roof of the elementary school, pondering your very existence. And I knew you'd be there, so I went up there, got on the roof, came, and we talked about it, and you assumed this was a sign of the end times, and that the world was about to be over, and the things you were most frustrated about. I remember you saying, you said, like, I have these regrets, and you talked about some things that we did as a kid that you regretted, but your biggest regrets were that Star Wars wasn't very good. The Phantom Menace wasn't very good, and I'm sure you said something about Topanga as well, but I just remember being like, oh my gosh. And I was like, thinking, if the world was going to end, imagine the disappointment Seth had in the Phantom Menace. The world is about to end, as far as he knows, and on the top 5 list of his regrets were that the Phantom Menace wasn't very good. That's how disappointed he was. And there was a million things more to be disappointed about that directly affected him in his life, but he was so disappointed that with his dying breath, he wanted to curse the Phantom Menace. I remember that, and I'll remember that till the day I live, because a Seth never forgets.
I always settle my debts. Now, so I had lots of idolatry, lots of insecurities. I don't know. I don't know why it bothered me so much. I think it's because I held on to so many things like heroes and stories and nostalgia. You know, I'm just going to switch to Boy Meets World. I don't care. So, when I watched Boy Meets World, it seemed like that was no joke. So I had my family and my life and how things turned out. And Boy Meets World just was kind of how I think I wish it was and kind of hoped it would. And I remember when my spirit finally broke. The world broke my spirit where I went, okay, life isn't that great. Because I remember my dad, I was like, so what happens when you get older? You just get a job you don't like and that's it? And you work till you die? He's all, yeah. And he told me that. I think I was 10 when he told me that. So Boy Meets World was this like amazing thing. And Star Wars was the other. I was like, well, Star Wars is there. So when Star Wars failed, I was like, even Jedis let you down. Even stories let you down. Even Topanga breaks up with Corey. Even Superman dies. I remember that when Superman died. So you have even the X-Men. I remember one of the things that threw me off the X-Men. Charles Xavier's onslaught and betrays them all.
Yeah.
So nothing was as beautiful as I thought in this world, and I overanalyzed and didn't help my anxiety and depression. Where are you going? I'm in a monologue.
I'm listening.
Are you too hot?
I'm listening.
Is it not just me? So, there was a lot of things going on, man. And you know my depression and everything didn't help either. Are you pulling out comic books?
I got an Onslaught.
Oh, gosh, dude. Hey, Ryan, why don't you talk while I light up my pipe? Go ahead.
About what?
Dude, you are blowing our whole deal with Nike right now. Like, everything. Right now. Greg is looking at you nervous. I don't even know where we're going with this. This has gone off the rails. This is why I left Aerosmith, was crap like this. Just like this.
I was going to read the speech that I think it's She-Hulk gives at the end of the Onslaught. Somebody says at the end of the Onslaught, it was like, part of life is understanding that you can't trust anybody, or something like that. And I thought it would be suitable for what you were talking about. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. And you were always more in tune, I think, with how you were feeling than I was. I was always trying to laugh stuff off or goof off because it would shield me or maybe hide me from how depressed I really was, specifically about the Phantom Menace. And there was a lot of other really meaningful things that you were worried about during that time when we saw the Aurora Borealis and you thought the world was ending. But I just remembered the Phantom Menace disappointing you so much that you were frustrated by that. And I get it. Like, that's, I think, why some of The Last Jedi frustrates people, because Luke was their guy. even though we grew to hate Luke because like he was such a whiny, annoying kid, and I was gonna go to Toshi Station and get the power converters. Yeah, no, leave them back home. I can't see anything with the blast shield on. And you're like, oh man, this kid's so whiny, but I love him because he's gonna bring balance to the Force, and I'm seeing him come out of obscurity into like this most exclusive group of Jedis, and then he just ends up being a grumpy jerk, and doesn't even have the common decency to show up to the
You know
Red
what depressed
Velvet
me more
planet.
than Phantom Menace? Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, because he had the high ground. He should.
Do you guys remember what Obi-Wan says to him? He goes,
There's always a bigger fish.
he's like, Zanzibar.
Oh, geez.
He says, you were supposed to restore balance to Force, bring
You were the
balance.
chosen one.
He goes, you were my brother. He's like, I loved you. And here's the thing. This was when I was a non-Christian. I leave the theater, and here's the answer we got. We're left in darkness. The Sith seem to have won. Good doesn't seem to be that good. Even Obi-Wan is discouraged. Anakin is missing limbs. He's bleeding. He's burnt. They're dead. Tyranny has won, so even freedom doesn't exist. And I remember leaving the theater going, I look at this, and I knew there was still episode 4, 5, and 6. I left the theater going, I'm like, the Jedi have fallen. That's the thing. And I went home to my one-room apartment, and I was like, this actually makes me a little sad. Because literally he's like, I loved you. And I look, and my brother was even bummed out by that. The fact that at any point you look and you go, and I remember I asked my brother, I think he said something like, he's like, sometimes darkness wins. And I just looked, and the place I was in my life, I was like, I do not need to hear that darkness wins. And just Revenge of the Sith, I remember was one where I looked, I'm like, you're seeing the Jedi, they run up, and then it shows the feet of the stormtroopers stop, and then they shoot them. And just so many things where I looked, and I was like, okay. And even when she said, she was like, this is how democracy dies. Was it with roaring applause or with
Thunderous applause?
thunderous applause? And I remember going, I'm worried every week about going to prison and being alone in here. And this is not the movie I need to see right now.
Yeah.
I think, but like
Defend it!
Well, I was going to say, I think the hard thing is for us, like, when we look at who Luke is in The Last Jedi, and we're like kind of like bummed that, who he's turned into, but he knows the story of the Jedi now. So he's seen, as it were, the prequels. And he has the same mindset that Seth did walking out of Revenge of the Sith when he looks at the Jedi, where he's heartbroken and he's like, here were these people that were supposed to be guardians of peace, that they were supposed to fight for what's good, and yet they became so blinded by power that they missed out on the evil in their backyard.
Right.
I mean, honestly, so there's an incredible write-up in Christ and Pop Culture that was looking at the story of Luke and what he's going through in The Last Jedi as what a lot of Christians are going through right now in the midst of where American evangelicalism has gone. And kind of Luke being many Christians who have grown up in the church, hearing the message of the gospel, hearing about Jesus Christ, and then seeing this church that has so married itself to power, and to thinking that basically that America is the New Jerusalem or something like that.
Right.
And so married themselves to power that they've placed themselves in bed with Sidious, as it were, and now they've been duped into, putting a bad guy in power in the name of good.
Right.
And looking back on that and going, well, what am I supposed to do with this now? That this is this heartbreaking
I don't
thing.
want Luke to be like me, though. I want him to be hopeful. Because I feel that. And when they go, oh, well, he feels... I don't want him to. I want him to say, Seth, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And change it. And it just... Oh.
But I think that, to some extent, though, I feel like that's what we had with the conversation with Luke and Yoda. And even what Leia continues on is that, like, this kind of looking at what's happened in the past, whether we're looking at the American Evangelical Church or the Jedi, as silly as that is, like... Not silly. But to look at those two things and to go, that it married itself to power, and so Luke was kind of going, the Jedi need to end. Like, it's over, and that's what a lot of people do with American evangelicalism. Like, so much of what we've done over the past 40, 50 years in marrying and trying to find political power, creating a subculture of our own music and t-shirts and breath mints. Like, we look at that with the same kind of like, you did all of this, and in the end, you've married yourself with the thing that you are supposed to go against. Like, we are in Babylon, as it were, and we're all like giving a thumbs up to Nebuchadnezzar, and it's like, what are you guys? What are we even doing here? And I think that's what I appreciate is like Yoda kind of shows up and like kind of goes, no, man, like the whole thing is that our failures are we are what they grow beyond. And I think so much of like, I think we should have some kind of frustration with the American church over the past 50 years. But at the same time, it's like that is what we're inheriting. That is our narrative. That is our story. And so for Rey, that's what she's growing beyond. That she probably won't make the same mistakes that they made.
So what is Luke offering that will take its place when the Jedi die, though? Because he reminds me almost of the emergent church, where they tear down everything and deconstruct it all.
Oh, no.
And point out, like, viable things of, like, this jacked up. But then I go, okay, so what's your alternative? And they go, I don't know, Rob Bell, blah, 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 blah. Because Luke says stuff. I go, yeah, that's all true. And I go, okay, so what's going to replace it? Because it can't be this ambiguous.
So that I would originally say that. What's beautiful, though, is in the last scene, when Poe gets a blanket out of the Millennium Falcon shell, like a drawer in the Millennium Falcon for Rose, next to the blankets, Rey has taken the sacred text with her. So she didn't leave those sacred texts on Octo.
And Yoda didn't blow him up.
Yoda didn't blow him up. Yoda was like, there's nothing in that library that the girl Rey does not already have. And so I was like, I get that. Like, there's a growing beyond and kind of a reformation that's happening, but it's a reformation based around the scriptures alone, like the sacred text for the Jedi. And I think that's what's happening right now for the American church, is we're going, okay, the way that the American church is operated is largely not in line with the sacred texts of the Jedi, as it were. And for us to actually move somewhere and go somewhere with this, we need to be always reforming, like we talked about in the last one, like going back to what was the good from the traditions that we're a part of, and ultimately seeing that as rooted and grounded in the sacred texts.
So is Brian McLaren Jedi or Sith?
He's Jar Jar.
You should let the silence be a little, like, you take the silence and you...
Pregnant pause. How does The Last Jedi align with your support of pacifism?
You went there. I didn't think you would.
We got 15 minutes. We gotta fill.
You're trying to cover up your crimes. Don't think I don't see what you're doing, Sean Moss. What's your real name?
Answer. Alan. Alan.
Sean Alan Moss. As
Social
they say in
Security.
His home country of Mars. Crazy. What's your middle name, Ryan?
Matthew.
What? You now know Sean and Ryan's middle name.
Seth's middle name is Jakob Wildskut.
Seth Jakob Wilschut. But I'm in Nevada, so it's Seth Jacob Wildshoot. So you heretics can see, right? So, we've covered up Sean's alleged crimes.
Have we? Will we ever?
You can't wash away some blood, Sean. You know, and I've done some terrible things, but... I just want to see how many pauses, because you know what people are doing with the podcast? They're like,
skip.
Skip. They're like, is it still, and they're about to turn it off, and then we talk, they're still sponsored by TG4.
Oh, I have some things to clarify that I would also like Ryan's input on.
Is it hypotheticals, or are you admitting to a crime?
No, we need to clarify things. We had a couple complaints, so we got to clarify things that we talked about on the last podcast. One is CRISPR is the genetic modification and editing thing for changing DNA of a human so that it doesn't have potential disabilities, or so that you can guarantee the outcome of a live birth. CRISPR uses both in vitro and in utero things to be able to change kids, and a lot of people think that it's playing God. I asked you And Tyler questions about whether or not you thought it was pro-life to, if you could, through genetic engineering, improve somebody's life. But I just want to clarify that I wasn't in support of it. I was just asking the question. However, whether or not CRISPR is or isn't effective, I think a lot of people were, well, 3 people were saying they didn't understand the argument that you were making, whether or not you were or were not in support of it.
Is this me or you?
You.
Oh,
They
yeah.
said I was in support of it, which I don't think I am. I just don't know. And they said they heard you saying it, but they weren't sure whether or not you landed on whether or not you're in support of it. So let's start with asking Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan,
And then I'll clarify my
do you
sensitive
think
position.
that you would support,
Bunch
if
of
it were
sissies.
possible, whether it's CRISPR or not, whether
They're
it's
all
available
pansies.
technology or not,
Wah.
is it possible or is it a good idea to change DNA in order to guarantee a better outcome of quality of life for somebody?
Is that technology based on like stem cell stuff? Like how are they able to, are you doing that at the expense of someone like another?
No. Let's just say you have a machine. There's no expense whatsoever. You're just able to go in and
Because that's my first
reprogram
question.
stuff.
You know what I mean? Like, are you
Absolutely.
improving the life of someone else for the death of someone else? That's like an ethics 101. Like, no.
Yes.
I don't know. I think I immediately go to like a question of conscience. You know what I mean? But for me, the problem is that it either leans on the side of playing God, but the problem is like, I don't know, because the playing God thing, it's a messy thing because it's either playing God or it's reducing the effects of the fall. Is honestly what you're playing out as.
Right.
But at the same time, like you could argue, is me giving money to someone that doesn't have a job and is down on their luck? Is that me playing God, giving them something that they don't have?
Right.
So you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I would have to spend more time thinking about the ethics of it. I'd be interested to hear what, like for instance, someone like Russell Moore, who like his whole job is to think about stuff like this and like from a biblical perspective, what he would say. Because within that, you get into a lot of like, that very much is like part of one of the things that we're supposed to be doing is reducing the effects of the fall. And that's what justice is at the end of the day.
Right.
And so I don't know. Are we going into the territory of justice or are we going into the area of a false use of technology, trying to reduce something that's not beneficial? Because, for me to like, so let's say we have a child that's with the potential of being born with Down syndrome, using CRISPR, some kind of technology like that to reduce that. I'm not killing that child. I'm not killing that soul. I'm improving the quality of life and the possibilities for that child. So gun to my head, I would go, I don't know. But I'm in that weird tension right now that I'm not sure. Because I listened to that episode with you guys with Tyler and I was like, man, that's interesting because I think it falls on the side of either there's a danger that comes there, but honestly, I see a lot of the potential where, depending on your eschatology, if you're post-mill like Tyler,
right,
that could totally be, this is one of the ways that the kingdom is actually being established, is that things like Down syndrome are able to, through that technology, being able to be dealt with, not like Iceland is doing through abortion, but through technology that actually keeps that child alive and actually improves their quality of life. So I'm not sure. That's a hard question.
It's definitely a tough question. And I think, that is the answer probably from me is I just don't know. But it's a legitimate question because that technology is coming in about and people are using it. I think some rapper, my friend Matt was telling me that some hip hop artists, I think him and his wife used it to make sure that they would have a girl because they didn't want.
Oh, so it's not just in effect with the diseases, but you can actually change like the chromosomes.
Other
and
stuff
to,
like hair color, all kinds of things.
That's interesting.
It is, right? Okay, Seth.
That's where
you got your glasses on.
Because now we're talking about like, now we're going away from, now we're moving into the territory of playing God versus.
That's just preference, though.
So playing God is something that we're told we shouldn't do. Do you have a scriptural reason why we shouldn't play God with technology?
Tower of Babel.
Oh, Sorry.
Okay, there
The
you
Tower
go.
of Babel is a perfect example of technology being used to make a name for ourselves. Like that is what that stands as. Is like, oh, we have bricks now. Let's build a tower and make a name for ourselves and build our way up to God and become gods ourselves. Like that's most commentators look at this as kind of a cautionary tale about the work of man and technology. And so I think that's the thing. Like looking through it through the lens of Babel. Are we reducing the effects of the fall? Or are we seeking to build a name for ourselves through technology? And that's the thing. It seems
example.
like it could be
I want, before I answer, Ryan, Tupac or Biggie?
Biggie.
Oh, gosh. All right, we'll talk about that
My
later.
boy.
I'll remember that at the Elder interview.
My boy. I like The Last Jedi now, too.
Winning him over.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I won't betray you.
I dislike it even more now. So, I always quote Anthony Bradley on this. Don't hear what I'm not saying. And stop listening to me thinking, let me listen for indicators to see if Seth is on my team. And based on that, I'll determine if I'll listen to his argument or what, charity I'll extend to him or respect. Because we kind of do that. We go, okay, well, Ryan's talking. Let me see if he meets these indicators. And if he doesn't, I don't have to listen to him. And it's kind of like the thing with fake news. We can go, oh, well, whatever, that's fake news. It's this easy way of saying, I don't have to listen to that. And just write things off. I don't know. I haven't researched it. I'm prepping sermons and I have a full-time job. Sean brought it up and I said, that sounds interesting. And I've read like maybe a paragraph on it, some stuff Sean sent. I don't know. If we're talking preference, where you want to have the perfect type of baby you're talking about, having family who survived World War II, and some of them were trying to hide Jewish people, I have a problem with trying to make the perfect child. Yeah, I have some issues with that. If we're trying to push back against the effects of the fall, then okay, I'll at least have a discussion with it. I don't know. I haven't studied it. And unlike some people who want to listen to a BuzzFeed article and think they know everything about it, I'd want to read about it, think about it, pray through it. I'd want to look and go, okay, is there anything in the early fathers that maybe can even point to this? Is there anything in theology that talks about this? Is there any theologians who speak about this who could support me in it? Is there any precedent for something that at least alludes to this? Can I go to Kuyper? Can I go to Augustine? Can I go to any of these guys and see something that points to it? I haven't studied that because I've been taking care of my mortgage and prepping sermons, so I don't know. And I don't like talking about things if I haven't studied them, because we have enough talking heads who go, let's just make up a name called Malix Moans. They go, I haven't studied this, but I'm going to talk like I'm an expert. Great. Cool. You added one more yell to this just discord of people arguing and bickering like little children. I don't know. And to be honest, I don't owe anyone an answer. If you're looking for qualifiers, I'm not going to give it to you because I don't owe allegiance to any party, group. I owe allegiance to a king. I legitimately don't know. Now, if I study it, I might come up with something. But part of the reason, and people don't listen to this, when I was talking with Tyler, I was like, I could be here, I couldn't. Because I have theology and views that develop over time. I do not. MacArthur, I feel like a lot of the time goes, I'm so certain of this. This is it. No, you're wrong. Like, this is biblical, this is unbiblical. I don't feel like that. There's a lot of things I don't land on where I go, I don't know. Like, Ryan's brought up communion. And I go, that's a good argument, Ryan. And I develop. And I think through these things. And a year or two later, I think about stuff. This was told to me at a podcast while I was half paying attention smoking a pipe. No, I don't have a educated opinion on it.
Yeah.
You know what I did when I got home after that? I didn't research it. I read an X-Men comic that I bought, which was fairly entertaining, and then watched Dave Chappelle. I don't know what I even think about.
Yeah.
I'd have to study it. I'd want to see where they're going. I'd want to see what's the cost. I'd want to know the motive of people. And also in our context of our country, I am very weary a little bit of what we do with this stuff, because most times we've done it for convenience, not the flourishing of life. So I'd want to hear them out. I'd want to have a discussion, but I don't know. It's like if someone said, what do you think about, this having to do with physics? I don't know. I know Polkinghorne, like he's talked about it a little bit, but I don't know. It's the same thing. And this is what I appreciate about my brother-in-law, Tony. He knows biochemistry. He doesn't talk outside of his field.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know. He has to read about it. So I don't know. And people don't like that because they go, no, you have to stand somewhere. Well, the heck I do, to use strong language. I don't have to. Because here's the thing that drives me nuts. Not everything's a hill to die on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't read everything about science. Are you kidding me? And it drives me nuts because I go, cool. If you have all the time to ignore your kids and be researched on everything, good for you. I go home and read fiction books and sometimes watch like Avengers. I don't spend all my time doing this. Like Ryan usually sends me something cool about theology where I go, oh, that's interesting. It takes me a while to read up on and think about. Like I had something about Isaiah that I read 4 months ago. I just brought it up to Ryan. So no, I don't know where I stand.
Yeah.
And Tyler was kind of that position too. And here's the thing. This I'm hoping when American evangelicalism dies and burns and we rise from the ashes, I'm hoping we can actually have discussions where we're honest and humble enough to say, I don't know about that topic. Let's walk through it. What's our idea about? Let's actually have like a creed maybe on or a stance, but we have to have a discussion. Yeah. And this is why I think people get mad at Russell Moore because he will walk you through a discussion he's thought through years. And they go, well, why aren't you just saying this? Well, why aren't you just staying on this side? Well, why aren't you being binary? Why aren't you, well, you said this about Trump. Oh, you must love Hillary. Well, blah, blah. And he is, I feel, a genuine guy going, no, I'm just trying to walk through these things and give you like a framework to think through. And they don't like that. Because here's the thing. They don't want my answer, Sean. They want me.
They want their answer.
Yeah. They want to know,
voice.
Is Seth on my team and to affirm it? And I don't owe you. I serve you. I love you. I'm here to shepherd you. But I owe God, and he's not asking me to pay it back. And he's the only one who can call in debt with me. I'm sorry, but I don't, all your I'm going to say this openly. And I know, because I've been preaching recently in an area that's fairly conservative. I not only don't care about your political and cultural allegiances, I think they're idolatry and they're disgusting. So I really don't give a crap. That's my answer.
But I think to kind of like, not devil's advocate, but kind of to almost say alongside it, Seth, like, I think one of the hard things though for you, and for me as I'm moving into
being a bishop in the Anglican Church, I agree. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, for me as I'm thinking about, as I'm, pastor candidate moving in that direction, for you as a pastor at Living Stones, like one of the roles of the pastor is as a public theologian. Like that kind of, like you just said, like I don't necessarily owe you anything, but part of the stance of being a pastor is that in many ways, part of shepherding people is that you do owe them an answer. Like that's part of your leadership is guiding them in a perspective. And even if it may be one that goes, man, conscience guides on a subject like this, to at least go, hey, from my perspective, here's how I'm weighing the issue. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think I totally get what you're saying, Seth, of going, I haven't studied on that one, but I think as a pastor, the call for us is to be some amount like a, this is how this makes sense to me. This is how, these are some guidelines maybe as you're thinking through conscience. Because I get what you're saying, but I also think like as a pastor, that means that you're a public theologian. People are looking to you to help guide them in making those decisions. Because I don't think most people are looking for someone to affirm within the church most often, aren't looking for people to affirm biases. Most often when they're coming to a pastor, I think they're largely going, help me understand this.
In America? I completely, dude, all right, this is how people frame questions a lot. Can you believe these Christians who wouldn't vote for Trump? And they're phrasing it like that. I've heard, or, dude, or this type of question. Tell me you don't believe this.
But I agree with Trump and something like that. There is a clear cut idolatry within not only our congregation but across the country of nationalism across the border. But I think. Across the border, within the border. I think
racist. Gosh,
across the state borders.
But what I'm saying though is on a subject like CRISPR, I think like that is something that someone would largely go, help me understand what the Christian stance is on this. Like with political, like that is a horse of a different name or whatever, like whatever the saying is.
Horse
like,
of a different tail.
That's a horse of a different color, different tail.
Horse of different nethers.
So that the political thing, because the amount of idolatry that we carry with our politics today, that's a different thing. I think something like CRISPR, something like the legalization of marijuana, something like drinking, something like sex, like there's a lot of areas where people would largely not be coming for an affirmation of their biases, but help me understand the Christian perspective on this, because I'm having a hard time understanding it myself.
Yeah,
I
would
think you
say,
give them too much credit because they'll still see those things through a political lens. Because I don't feel like we go, oh, only 10% of people do this. Because even this, when they bring up refugees, they're not saying, oh, they're still seeing it through a political lens of, hey, Ryan, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? And overwhelmingly, if it was the minority that didn't see, because they take all these things. I agree with you. I look at these things and go, oh, it's a theological question. They go, well, yeah, but let's not get bogged down with that, because let's admit, I'm a little more street smart than Jesus. That's what we're really saying with some things. But they go, everything is still through a political lens, because like, they're still wondering. They're going, I want to know what Seth thinks about this. And there are some people who genuinely, I think, are searching, going, what's the stance here? I'll give you that. I totally think there's people like that. I think there's also a portion of people still going, like the email he got, they're going, I want to know, are you on my team? Are you going to affirm what I've already thought about? And I feel like I have given them an answer. I say, I don't know. And when I say I don't owe them anything, it's this idea of, I think I'm there to shepherd them. I think I'm there to teach them things. And I think I'm there to be an overseer to find the lost sheep. I'm there to pray with them. It says I'm supposed to study the scripture, because that's why we had deacons, so that we could, put our time studying scripture, preaching, all that. I don't know that I owe them an answer and a perfect studied idea of every public idea that comes into being, where, okay, on every single thing you have to have something refined and perfect. Especially because I do. I think even the ideas that you give them, I think you give them too much credit. You go, oh, they're just looking for this. Some of the young people I've seen do that. The vast majority over that, they're still seeing it through a political lens of, when they ask you, Ryan, who'd you vote for? They're not saying, oh, I want to know who to vote for. No, it's because they want to know, is Ryan on my team? Is this the type of church I want to be on? Is Ryan one of those liberals? Is he one of those conservatives? I've seen the left do some crazy things too. And that's why I mean in one sense, I agree. I'm their shepherd and they're looking to me for leadership of, okay, what about this? I don't know that in every aspect, every social issue, every aspect that comes up in society, I'm owed to say, hey, here's the position, because I think some positions are going to fall into discernment, conviction, personal, where you're going. I think what I owe them is to be biblically faithful, to teach them, to shepherd them. But I do think, like when it talks about, oh, if your weaker brother, doesn't eat meat or different things, and it gets into all these things, I don't know that I owe them that, because I think I'm owed them as a shepherd. But there's so many things that come down to conviction, discernment, and personal, like some guys who say, I don't drink. I can't handle that. I shouldn't drink. Yeah. I think with those gray areas, I think there's too many issues to say, well, on all of them, you owe them some stance, because I go, well, what stance? The Presbyterian stance? The Baptist? Am I going Europe? Am I going Australia? Are you talking about the new perspective on Paul? Where are you going with this? Because there's some things I owe them and other stuff where I go, I don't know that scripturally you could prove you owe them a stance on genetically altering things, especially when I don't even know the people who are genetically altering fully know what they're doing. And I'm like, it's like, you owe them a view on teleportation. Well, I don't know that scripturally you can prove. I get where you're going, because I don't want to be too cynical, but I feel like even the stuff that you think is theological, they still are going, no, it's through a political lens, even if they don't admit that. And maybe I do. There is something where I have to go, yeah, as a pastor, whether I like it or not, they're looking to me going, hey, where should we go on this? What's the stance? I agree. But I think there's so many things that like science, like if they go, well, what's your stance on space travel? Like, well, I could think this or this, but I don't know if scripturally you could 100% land on, Seth, you owe them a stance on space travel. I go, really? Because no one agrees on that. Yeah. No one agrees on that. Yeah. So I'd be asking to take a stance on something that I'd have to say, well, this is my personal opinion. They go, okay, so I'm just taking the personal opinion, versus if they said, what about the Trinity? Oh, that I can take something. Yeah. I feel like I'm supposed to shepherd him to heaven, not shepherd him to a perfect position on everything. Yeah. I care less about what they think, like the perfect position, and how they think. I think I do owe it to them train them up and shepherd them in a way where they always think through a biblical framework to come to their conclusions.
Yeah.
But I don't think I owe them to always say, I'm going to tell you what conclusions always to have of, here's what you need to think. I need to train them on how to think.
No,
I don't know. Maybe I'm
that's-
wrong.
No, I think that was more of my initial pushback, is I think that what you do owe them, like you said, teaching them and guiding them in the way they should go. I think largely that it's not just like, okay, here's my position. We'll use the CRISPR, or we could talk about even like,
Is it CRIS? How is it?
CRIPS. It's a CRISPR.
R.
Was I not? See, I felt like I was clear on the podcast of I don't know what I think.
Yeah.
Was I not clear?
I don't know. All I'm saying is I think I'm trying to remember back to when I listened to that one, because it felt like you were fairly kind of like, I'm not sure. But I think what I think you do owe people is not an answer to CRISPR, or like, honestly, even like something like, I don't know. We'll use the example
Space
of
travel.
CRISPR. Yeah, space travel is not so much like here's in 1 Corinthians, here's a perspective on something like this, or because
Right.
you're not going to find that.
Right.
I mean, that's so much of what got us in trouble with the way that we interpret the first opening passages of Genesis, is us trying to think through it through a scientific lens when that's not what it's arguing. But I think that as science makes advances, that we absolutely owe the people that we lead here's kind of, I'm not sure what I think, but here's kind of the guidelines of as you're thinking about
Fair
that.
enough.
I think that's what we do owe people, is kind of going, hey, biblically, you're open to various perspectives depending on conscience. Here's the guidelines at this point. And the science is still out, so I'm still trying to figure out what I stand on this, and I'm learning about this. But right now, as I'm thinking about this, here are kind of the guidelines and the perspectives that are helping me think through this.
Maybe
That-
I can.
That thing. I actually have an
Go
answer
ahead.
then. Go ahead and answer this text.
Okay.
You're so terrible. You're a bad person. I think that's actually super. All right, that's actually helpful for me. I would say this: if you are a Christian, young or old, listening to this, when you read through this, and I want you to just throw away some of the parties, the politics, because you need to realize these are men who are in positions of power. Even a Christian can be, to say sinful things and wrong. I want you to just look at the Bible and go, okay, what's my motive? So let's think about motive. Why are we changing this? Then think about, what are we changing? Are we changing something that's a result of the fall, or are you trying to make them match up to some societal standards? Have you read the church fathers? Read through church fathers. What have they talked about with life? Are you Kuyperian? Do you read Kuyper or do you read Augustine? What theologians are you reading? And I want to know this, does it infringe on a commandment? It says, love your God, love your neighbor. Does it infringe on that? If you do something and it changes with this child, are you still trusting in God when you do it? I'd ask, are you trying to escape suffering? Have you been in pain and you don't want to feel pain anymore? I'd ask, scripturally, do you have a basis for us? I'd ask, you are indwelt by the Spirit. Have you prayed with your spouse about this? I'd ask, when it was presented to you, what was one of the first emotions you felt? Did you feel like, good, I won't have to raise this kid who has problems? Or did you think, good, this kid won't have to deal with this terrible effect of sin? So I'd say, start with, look at Scripture, look at church fathers, look at smarter theologians who have studied it maybe, ask Christians who are scientists, question your motives, pray about your heart, ask the Spirit to lead you, talk with your spouse, and even think about, when representing the kingdom, what does this say? If you're someone who's an ambassador and the church is an embassy, think about, to non-Christians, what is this conveying? And I'd say walk through those. And you may say, I still come to a point where you go, I don't know if I agree with you, Seth. But if you've walked through church fathers, church history, theology, scripture, you've prayed, and you've looked at your motives, I think you need to go from there and realize that that's the most I can offer you, and that this is a fallen man who loves God who's offered you that. And that's a framework to at least start a foundation and think through verses saying, don't look at talking points, don't look at fear tactics, don't look at just slippery slope. I mean, yes, you can see where Christians are going to go, or, where man can fall. I get that, the whole, well, it could lead to this. But walk through and be honest of the implications of, where can this theology go? Where can this view go? Because ultimately, all these, whether you admit them or not, reflect something you think about God. So that would be my answer, and I don't fully know because I haven't studied, and that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Could I try to distill this down a little bit? Just since we got kids, we got to get to bed.
I'm sick of your opinions on this podcast.
Did
that answer a little bit, Ryan?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the main thing that I was wanting was, like, because to me it initially sounded like you were kind of passing the buck to, like, there's no way I can know this, and I don't owe you anything, so figure it out yourself.
Oh, that was exactly what I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, I was kind of more guiding, like, well, no, like, as a pastor, and even now, like, as a podcast speaking, like, there's a position that you're speaking from.
Exactly.
Like, that you may not owe people an answer to everything, but I think you do owe them here's the guidelines of how we're thinking about it, and here's kind of what would be helpful for you in approaching your own perspective on this, because this is something that Scripture is silent on. And so what we can look at is, how does Scripture speak about the things that it speaks about, and from there we can understand maybe some guidelines as we think about something like this.
People just make me so angry.
Can I just say, though,
go ahead, Sean.
In the context of this podcast, and we're putting out opinions and talking about things and providing entertainment, I guess, or whatever we're doing, I really enjoy a format where we can, whether I'm doing it to you, Seth, or I'm doing it to Ryan or a guest or anything like that, I like to be able to ask somebody without them being able to research what they have an opinion, what their opinion is.
What they're shooting from the
something.
hip on almost.
Because I feel like sometimes you get a more genuine opinion before people are able to go see, what did the church fathers say? What did Augustine say? Or Kuyper, or whatever it is. Sometimes I get to hear more of what people really believe when I ask them, like you said, to shoot from the hip. And so that's nice. But that being said,
was that me shooting from the hip? Because I feel like it was.
Yeah, it definitely was. But what I'm saying is, if you don't have an opinion on something, I don't think you should be forced to form an opinion on something or share an opinion that you haven't actually researched. The goal is for you to share an opinion that you actually deeply have. So deeply, in fact, that you don't even need to do a whole bunch of research and quote a bunch of people to be able to say it. But you believe it so deeply that you can display that opinion easily just through, I guess, shooting from the hip or just run-of-the-mill conversation. And I think that's an important thing to do. There's going to be no time when somebody says, I don't have an opinion on that and I don't have anything to share about that, then I'm going to say, well, you owe somebody opinion on that. However, like, as a pastor, definitely, I think what you're saying was correct, Ryan. Like, you definitely should be able to share with somebody there something about how you feel that would inform what their position could be, potentially. But they still have the ability to do that. We should close with this, since we have kids that are going crazy in the house right now. Ryan?
Yes.
Cake or pie?
Pie.
That's right.
Yeah!
So far, we're 10 for 10. Pie is always the best.
Pie always wins.
Pie always wins,
Especially my wife's bourbon pecan pie.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Dude,
A little bit of ice cream.
My body is ready.
The flesh is weak, but the spirit
is
ready
willing.
for pie.
Yeah.
Das Vidania.
All right. Well, that wraps it up. I think we had good discussion.
I thought we were doing 5 episodes.
We'll have to do another night. And, so this is Tales from the Ditch. Pastor Ryan, is there anything else that you wanted to say?
Keep it CRISPR.
Keep it crip, as Apostle Paul said, because I know Scripture.
And I say keep it
And
real.
for those who felt like I was angry when you were sending in those questions, I want to assure you I was. But I do, I do love being a pastor. I really do. Like, you guys may have heard him be like, man, Ryan was way too hard on Seth. I agree. I love being a pastor, though. It's just, sometimes I don't want to answer questions. I'm like, come on. Because I do feel like they're all qualifiers. I do feel they're all like, okay, you want to see if I'm on your team. and I'm always right.
All right. Well, that was Tales from the Ditch.
At
Please
gmail.com.
send us an
email
email.
Sean.